Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 261. The Journey to Self-Love, Overcoming the Fear of Prioritizing Yourself. Well, welcome back to this month where we're getting into authenticity, how to be who you really are at the core. You know, the good stuff underneath all of the struggles and the defense mechanisms, maybe the people-pleasing, maybe all the anxiety and the stress. Maybe under all the masks that you might still wear. So last week we explored authenticity, and this week we're going to carry on that theme by getting into why it's hard for some of us to take better care of ourselves, believe it or not. And yet, ironically, we know when we do that, we feel better, we feel more confident, we feel less stressed, and it's easier for us to just be ourselves. So even though, like a lot of the things we talk about here on the show, we know these things intellectually, because even though you may know this, you may still not be able to do it. But before we get into today's topic, if you do need help, especially if you're listening today and you say, Mary, that sounds great, but I don't even know where to start, I have some great opportunities for you to take the work even deeper. If you're new to boundaries, which we're going to get into some of those today as well, I have a free ebook, which has worksheets and things to think about and things to listen to. And the link for that is right in the show notes. And if you want more than that, I have a 3-part masterclass, which is great. And it gets into how you lost your voice a long time ago and what are the things you want to start working on to get that back? And that also is interactive and asks you to do some thinking and some journaling and some worksheets so that you can really take ownership of the work. And then if you're really serious about making your life better, I have my flagship course, which is Find Your Voice. And that is 12 modules, immersive, online. And it has a great group coaching component and one-on-one help from me. All that information is right in the show notes. And also, if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you're not ready to take a course yet, check out the link there for the Power Hour with me, where you and I can sit down over video and figure out what's going on with you and what is the best course of action for you to take. So the link is right there. If you have any questions on any of this, please reach out. I am here. So I believe that much of the work we must do around becoming more confident and happier with ourselves and our life has to do with owning who we really are. And we talked about that last week. And a big part of ownership, I think, is taking care of ourselves. So when you start working on yourself and you begin to value who you are, your needs, your boundaries, your feelings, your experiences, then it's time to start working on how well you take care of yourself. We don't usually start here, I don't think. I think we typically start boundary work looking out there, like who can I say no to? What can I get away from in terms of toxicity? How can I express my anger about how I don't like my life? That kind of thing. And then eventually we go inward. And one would think that taking care of ourselves would be easy in terms of the work, that it would not feel threatening or scary or overwhelming or make us freeze or procrastinate or sabotage or all the things that we can do. But ironically, and like we've talked about here before on the show, whatever is positive and vulnerable can seem scarier than the bad to people who are used to the bad. So if you have trauma in your past, if you're used to disappointment, being let down, if you grew up in all sorts of environments that made it hard to trust the good, then it would make sense. Then you would have a hard time trusting that this is a good thing to take care of yourself. But it's really important because, like we've talked about here before, self-love, self-care, prioritizing your own needs, setting boundaries around taking care of yourself, and that includes taking care of your business, is crucial for you to feel sane as a person, for you to feel grounded, like you make sense, like you can trust yourself. Remember, 90% of this work is inside out. Yes, we set boundaries out there, but we have to believe on the inside that we deserve to set those boundaries, which is why, like I mentioned a moment ago, the real work starts when we get pissed and we get angry in a healthy way, in a grieving sort of way, in a self-defining sort of way, because we're recognizing and realizing that things are not okay. Things we may have been in denial about before or thought were normal are not okay. And I reflect back to clients all the time when they hit this part of the work. I'm like, remember a year ago, you thought this was normal to work 90 hours a week and not get rest and not take a day off and all the things. And we laugh. And then they recognize, wow, I have come a long way. So there are different reasons why self-love and self-care can feel intimidating. If you have any cultural, societal influences in your life, you might want to consider those. Like culturally, how you were brought up, what was said about self-care? Like what was the vibe? What's the messaging for you? Especially if you're a woman. Because gender differences matter around a lot of this stuff, or they have mattered. I think that is changing. Like women historically have been socialized to take care of everyone else, including men. But then also, men's self-care wasn't really talked about as much as it is today either. So in my mind, I think it's getting better and a little more equanimity is in play. Okay, so why would this be hard? Like, why would it be hard to take a day off and go to the spa and take a break and say no to working too many hours, say yes to something fun to do? I mean, there's no limit on the possibilities of how we could describe self-care. I think there's personal responsibility self-care, but I also think it's how do we let ourselves have boundaries around ourself, between where we end and others begin, to put boundaries around our time and energy, our emotional boundaries, our physical boundaries, all the things. Well, deep down, we might have some fears and or insecurities around practicing self-care and self-love. And I'm only going to scratch the surface here. This is a very deep subject. And so if you need to do some work with someone around this, like we talked about earlier, the courses that I have, grab a coach. If you're in counseling, bring this up with your counselor. Talk about this with your coach. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. You might have your own, but these are some common fears and insecurities that we can have and not even realize it. The first one is fear of selfishness. So that means worrying that prioritizing your own needs is going to be perceived by others as selfish or inconsiderate. And I think we can really get distorted beliefs around this thing. And unfortunately, I think families do not talk about this at the dinner table like they should, nor do parents model it in a healthy way. And so what happens is you may have grown up with a distorted view of what is self-care and what is selfishness, and what does that continuum look like, and how everything is really contextual, and how it's not selfish to take care of yourself. I mean, people have to do a lot of deprogramming here, a lot of deprogramming and reframing things and understanding things differently. So education is a big piece to a lot of this. And then again, once you know it intellectually, then you have to absorb it emotionally and psychologically and know that you too are included in the group who gets to take care of themselves. Because I hear a lot of clients say, well, yeah, self-care is really important. But if I get down in it with them, they admit, but not for me. Not right now, Mary. I got too much going on. Like all the excuses come up. So there's this set apart feeling for a lot of people. And that comes from childhood. So once you think about what messaging did you get growing up, either overtly or invisibly, the unspoken family rules about taking care of your own needs. And when is that selfish? It's only selfish if it's at the detriment to someone, like someone's bleeding in front of you. Okay, then no, you don't go take a nap. But really looking at what messaging did you get and what have you internalized? The other piece to this that isn't talked about enough is you may have just subverted your own needs because no one was going to meet them, and so you certainly weren't going to meet your own. We internalize the abuse and the neglect. And you may have learned to focus on what everyone else needs to feel okay, to be that rescuer, to be that caregiver, to abandon yourself on many different levels, and at some points in your life worse than others. It is very vulnerable to take care of ourselves. And part of that also is the fear of rejection. Like, you can't take care of yourself without boundaries, I don't think. So there can be a lot of anxiety that setting boundaries or saying no is going to lead to rejection or disapproval from others, or maybe worse. And so then I want you to think about who's around you. Do they practice self-care? Do they always encourage you to take care of yourself? Have you tried it? How'd that go? What's going on relationally for you? The next one is the biggest one, and it's the biggest hurdle for clients. And like I tell clients, I'm not going to lie to you, the guilt's going to come. It's probably going to be unearned, and we can walk through that and talk it out. But there's the guilt. There's the feeling guilty for putting yourself first, especially if it feels foreign because you've always put everyone else's needs before your own. Maybe you've neglected yourself for so long in lots of visible and invisible ways that you don't even know where to start. So the guilt comes, and we really want to do a lot of work around reframing that. Like, it's unearned. You shouldn't feel bad for taking a weekend off, and here's why. And then you have lots of conversations with people who can mirror back to you why it's not selfish and why it's self-care. Because remember, everything really is contextual. It depends on what's going on. There's a big fear of change. So if you struggle with anything we've talked about so far, you probably have some control issues. And people have control issues because they have some emotional trauma, unmet needs, whatever going on in their past. And so when there's change and you can't control it, you might not feel safe. So there might be some discomfort because you're changing patterns, you're changing routines that have been there for a long time, and your brain's like, uh-oh, is there a danger, right? It's saying, is it safe here, or should we freeze, or should we fight it? A big part, though, of being afraid of taking care of yourself is your self-worth. Like, you have to believe that you deserve care, you deserve love, you deserve nurturing, you deserve rest. You deserve to go do something fun. You deserve more money. I mean, self-care can look like a lot of different things. You deserve to change things up. And if you don't believe deep down, like subconsciously, there's some big wounds there where you got the vibe early on in life, like, yeah, no, that's not true, because people didn't show up for you, or people were so toxic, they made you believe that you weren't worth it. They didn't stick around, they didn't keep their word, they violated your boundaries, they neglected your needs, they gaslit you, they manipulated you. There's so many different ways that this can happen. Those are the typical ones. And tied into this is that fear of failure. So what if you don't do it perfectly? I know that sounds crazy to say, but I've had clients whisper that to me, like, Mary, what if I don't do it right? And I'm so glad they're brave enough to say that out loud, because there's embarrassment even in admitting that for a lot of people, because it sounds so crazy when you say it. But there's not enough self-confidence yet to say, there is no right or wrong way to do this. There's just me trying. And so it is one in both. We need to practice this to feel better about ourselves. And sometimes we need to do a little bit more boundary work and some healing work first, and then we'll look at our self-care. So if you haven't looked at it yet, know there are probably good reasons in terms of where you are in your journey, and it's okay. It will show up. It always does. We can't start feeling so much better about ourselves and then not want to take care of ourselves. Like, the math doesn't work, so don't worry about it. The other thing that we don't talk about enough is the fear of vulnerability. And this can be felt in different ways for people, emotionally, physically, mentally. Because what if you do take time and take a week off, and have time to yourself to think and feel. That might be overwhelming and terrifying, which is why a lot of people report having panic attacks on vacation, because they stopped being so damn busy and so distracted and so focused outside of themselves that they could actually experience some reality on the inside, like things are not okay, kind of panic attack. There's emotions that could come up that maybe you've been stuffing and delaying addressing because you just didn't feel psychologically ready. We won't face anything we're not ready to face, and we can't face a lot of stuff alone. So what happened in the past to create some of these fears? Well, being taught to always put others first, receiving conditional love, like if you behaved well and got A's and didn't ask for much at dinner and didn't start any conflict with your brother, you didn't assert yourself, that really could have helped you internalize the message that your voice doesn't matter and what you need certainly doesn't matter. And we've talked here before on the show where you might have heard messages and your parents were well-meaning, but they would say, you don't want to eat that right now, dinner's almost ready. Or you're going to put on weight if you eat that. Or you've had plenty of time to play in the yard. Why would you need any more? Now, this is a parent's own self-alienation being projected onto you, but you only have to hear that a couple of times to believe it. Maybe your family prioritized focusing outside of themselves to take care of everybody else. Like you were ungrateful for what you had if you wanted something else or something better. And this can be taught in all sorts of ways. It can be taught in the family, it can be taught in church communities, in cultural communities where you're not supposed to ask for what you need. And here's the thing. You can be grateful and still want something. It's okay. A big one, like we mentioned a moment ago, is emotional neglect and invalidation. When your needs were consistently either ignored or unmet or inconsistently met, because that'll make you feel crazy on the inside. Like sometimes it was great, and sometimes it wasn't there at all. So then you got the message, and this is important, I'm not deserving of consistent care, like not perfect. Not saying your parents need to be perfect, none of us are perfect parents either, but consistent enough where mom and or dad or grandma or caregiver was grounded emotionally enough where they could be consistent. You know, with the exception of a bad thing happening or a bad day, but they were not an emotional roller coaster. And they had the emotional maturity to show up for you consistently, day in, day out, the best they could. To nurture you and help you feel safe and feed you and listen to you talk and honor your feelings. Give you the message that you taking care of yourself is a good thing. You saying no to your friend who wants to come over for the whole weekend is a good thing, and it's okay. So these experiences, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, teach kids that their emotions and their needs are either important or not. And this can really lead to difficulty in recognizing your own needs and valuing your own feelings as an adult. Because this is what happens if your needs were not met and or validated, your feelings weren't validated, boundaries weren't practiced in the home, your boundaries were not honored. You might have had trauma back there where they were really violated, and if that's the case, I want to stop here for a moment and say, you can't heal that by yourself. And stuffing it down doesn't do any good because it's running the show. So please, when and if you're ready, reach out and get some care around your trauma work. Get some professional help there, get some support groups going, because we got to heal that. We can do this other work, but we're going to run into roadblocks if we don't also heal what happened. So how does it manifest in adulthood? What does this look like? Well, it looks like low self-esteem and low self-worth. Deep down, you might not feel worthy of love and care, or maybe it's conditional. How about that one? Did you get everything done on your to-do list and now you can relax kind of conditional love? What did you grow up with? What have you been telling yourself without realizing you're telling yourself? Or do you start taking care of yourself, but as soon as someone needs something, it's off the radar and you've forgotten? The other big piece is that difficulty setting boundaries. Well, you can't do this work without boundaries. You might have a problem Even knowing what healthy boundaries are, or maybe you know what they are, you can't set them consistently. Your fear of rejection, your fear of conflict, maybe fear of more trauma. If you assert what you need, maybe you've gotten into a lot of people pleasing in your life. Doing that without even realizing it, stuffing your feelings, suppressing your emotions. That is why a lot of times people need to go on vacation, like literally be removed from their home or their workplace where they can't do and take care of people. And they'll still try. They'll still try to get up and clean the kitchen in the beach house kind of thing. But it's better because they've been given permission. I'm at the beach. Maybe I can sit on my butt in the sand and relax for an hour kind of thing. And I want you to think about, when has it been easier for you to give in to relaxation or say no to something? Where are you? Who's around? Who isn't? And what's going on? That's why I work with clients all the time. And I say, maybe you can't go home and try to do this. Maybe you need to go to Starbucks or somewhere else so you can actually sit with your journal. Because when you get home, you're probably going to take care of everyone else. You're going to do dishes. You're going to do laundry. You're going to do something. And so sometimes we need those external boundaries of time and space and geographical limitations or whatever the limitations might be. So it kind of forces us in a loving way to say, no, I'm here at Starbucks. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to drink my tea or my coffee, and I'm going to write. Another manifestation is anxiety and depression. Absolutely. When there's emotional neglect that we internalize and then carry out in our adult life, we are going to have issues. We're going to have anxiety. We're going to have depression. We're going to have physical manifestations of all this stuff. We might have all the above. So you probably already know where a lot of your stuff comes from. If you don't, it is worth to do some digging. It's worth learning more about this. And then it is worth practicing, working on, trying to get better. And so healing what happened in the past, maybe some grief work around that, some trauma work is really important. And you're going to do a lot of that before you even start taking better care of you. And again, I encourage you, get in a group, get in our Facebook group. We talk about this stuff all the time. And every Wednesday I do Facebook Live sessions where we get into how to take care of ourselves and how to set boundaries and why it's hard and all the things. We have to retrain our brain too. We have to look at what we tell ourselves and what we believe. And why do we still believe that it's selfish to take a weekend off or whatever, and really challenge those distortions, challenge those maybe unhealthy codependent beliefs your family gave to you because that's all they knew. It means working on boundary work, and that is a big undertaking and a worth it undertaking. And if you really struggle with those, get some support and some help around that. Boundaries are not easy, and we can't do them in a vacuum. We need love and support around us. I also think we need support. We need caring people who are going to gently remind you, no, please don't go into work tomorrow. You already said you wanted to take the day off. It's okay. It's like the little kid in you needs to hear, it's okay. It's not selfish. It's self-care. I'm a big believer in questioning the evidence and experientially giving yourself the evidence that it's okay to take care of yourself. So some of this is taking little small steps to practice self-care, see how it feels, tweak it, evaluate it, talk about it before you commit to it. Because a lot of people have so much anxiety that they need that. And that's okay because the experiential data isn't going to lie. When you go take a weekend off, and hopefully the people around you don't make you pay for it when you come back, and you come back and you're relaxed and you're in a better mood, and you are a better partner and you're a better parent and a better employee and all the things, then you start getting the data that, this is really a good idea. I'm so much nicer to be around. I'm nicer to be around when I do this. I'm nicer to be around when I get to work out and get enough sleep and eat better, when I'm not throwing 50 plates up in the air and trying to keep them up there and catch them all. So you're going to need to practice a little bit, and whatever hits your radar, you know what I'm going to say, start there. That is where you are able to start, is what I believe. And that will lead you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Empowerment comes from doing. So start where you are. Take responsibility for getting support around you, whatever healing work you need to do. Maybe you've done trauma work already and you just need people around you to hold you lovingly accountable to yourself. That's really important because you need them to challenge you and say, wait a minute, what's going on? You said you wanted to do that for yourself. What's going on? And then you can share, well, the guilt came up. I started to do it and I got really anxious. That is why you need people to talk you through, kind of like walking through a haunted house. You need someone to hold your hand and reassure you that it's going to be okay. It's really important to get honest with yourself around where you might struggle with self-care. What boundary work do you want to start doing? Why that might be scary and hard, and then what support do you need around you? Because when we take care of ourselves, we not only have to say no to things and people and situations on the outside, but we also have to practice self-discipline. And that can be harder because a lot of people can initially internalize that as, okay, now you get to beat yourself up and flog yourself and shame yourself and get all perfectionistic around it. And that's not what I'm talking about. Again, which is why you should not do this work by yourself. We can't trust you to not take it there. And it's not your fault. So we need to internalize what's healthier, what's more normal. What is self-compassion? What is self-care? What's not selfish? What is personal responsibility? What do we need to say no to ourselves around? That internal discipline piece is a part of this. If you're going to say yes to a weekend away, you've got to say no to the compulsive part of you that feels compelled to work or feels compelled to have the house perfectly clean before you leave. Those of you who struggle with this know exactly what I'm talking about. Of piling on way too much before you try to leave the house to sabotage you getting away on time. We could talk all day about the examples that are very common for people. So if you struggle with that, please be compassionate with yourself, chuckle about it, and say, I want to change this. The other thing you can do, which I think is really helpful, is again, get into that education piece. Go to workshops, take a course, like some of the courses that I have, read, listen to podcasts, listen to other people talk about their own journey, so that you can do what wasn't done for you, because it never got taught or modeled or normalized for most of your life, probably. And it can really mean having a different view on what is good, what is healthy, what is necessary for us to take care of ourselves. What do we need to do if we want to calm down our nervous system? Because that's the thing. If you have trauma, you need to do this more than the next guy. And yet it's 1,000 times harder for you. It makes me so sad when I think about that. You want to try to practice as much mindfulness throughout the day as you can. If you can meditate, great. If you can just slow down and breathe, take 5 minutes at a time, whatever you do. Work on letting go, work on self-soothing practices, guided meditations, whatever works for you. Practice gratitude. Try to keep a gratitude journal. I know sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you don't want to, and that's okay too. A lot of people with trauma have fear like, well, if I'm grateful, that must mean that everything's okay. Or maybe if I do that, Mary, someone's not going to believe me about this other stuff over here. I'm like, back it up. Nope. The reason why I love gratitude is you're just saying these particular needs are met right now. And I can have gratitude for those. And that does not mean I can't be also pissed or hurt or sad or afraid about other things. Because guess what? Reality says both can be true. And more than likely, life is a mixed bag, and both are true anyway. But I also think that you can calm down your nervous system enough to use your prefrontal to problem solve and make things better in your life, and not fall down that rabbit hole of despair and victim stance, I think. As you start internalizing and absorbing these great things that maybe you didn't get growing up, you're training your brain, but you're also building your motivation. You're creating a whole different worldview. Remember, your subconscious is adaptive, and you want it to start adapting to a healthier mindset, a healthier way of looking at things. And if you need to do your research on what happens when you don't take care of your health, and what happens when you don't get enough sleep, and what happens when you don't calm down your nervous system, you may need that. And that's okay too. You know what you need, or you figure out pretty quickly what you need. My encouragement is go whatever route you need to go. If you need to go the positive route, fine. If you need a kick in the pants, because that feels more compelling than your desire for a weekend off, have at it. A lot of people need that scary proof because it kind of can cut through the guilt that they feel or they think they're going to feel if they take care of themselves. So today we talked about the often intimidating journey towards self-love, self-care, and prioritizing your own needs, that if you feel that way, you have a lot of company. Many people struggle with these concepts due to deeply ingrained beliefs and fears, often stemming from childhood and early experiences of emotional neglect, gaslighting, invalidation, all the things. And we talked about how these early experiences can really shape our adult behaviors because we internalize all of that in terms of a way to be, like how we're supposed to live. And it can make it really challenging for us to have genuine boundaries around our well-being. So we talked about understanding the roots of these fears helps us to challenge and reframe those negative beliefs and start practicing some self-care little by little. To get education, to get support around us is really crucial to do this work, to work on our boundaries, to work on whatever trauma work we might need to do, and to create a plan for self-care. So if you resonated with anything we talked about today, it's okay. You got lots of company. And the fact that it resonated with you tells me you're ready to, or you're already working on it. So you can feel really good about that. There's no finishing this work. There is simply moving towards better and better self-care. So wherever you are on that continuum, keep going. Reach out if you need support. Join the Facebook group, reach out for a power hour, reach out for a course, get some healthy people around you, and that's going to make it so much easier. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Tough topic, important topic to talk about. If you don't get the newsletter already with all the information in it, check it out at ownitpowercast.com. That information's in the show notes as well. All right, so pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.